Hello, my name is Michael. Welcome, and thank you for deciding to join me for this video. The topic is turning slogans into powerful practices. If you have visited my online store called Attention Bazaar or read the description below, you'll see that slogans are at the heart of what I'm offering. I create slogans and put them on mugs and t-shirts and tote bags and everyday items so that they can provide reminders of important ideas and frames of mind that we can remember, and this will facilitate our growth, our development. There's a long history for me personally in how slogans came into my life, but I think there's a long human history as well for how we've used words to aim us in the directions that we want to go. The more I prepared for this video, the more I realized it's a big topic and that I couldn't get it all done in one go. Or if I did, it'd be hard to get people to listen for the whole thing. So I've decided to break it into 3 parts. This first part, I'm going to focus on slogans and those words and the deep roots of this kind of practice. And basically how to practice just with the contemplation of the words of slogans. In the second video, what I'll do is introduce a variety of ingredients or other elements that can be brought to bear on a slogan practice that will turbocharge it, put it on steroids so that it's very powerful. Words themselves are very powerful, but as I hope to describe and convince you, there is a lot more that can be brought to it that can make it even more effective. So that will be the second video. In the third video, I will offer 2 examples. I think just 2. One will be very elaborate to give a sense of just how far it can go, what you could actually do with slogan practice if you add these other elements to it. And I will give another example that's very simple and easy, just to show that that's also possible and that it doesn't have to be a very complicated affair. Basically, instead of just providing practices and telling you how to practice, the purpose of these 3 videos is to provide you with the means to create your own practices, to understand what elements go into them and draw on them as ingredients as you create things to do that will facilitate your own growth and development. This is something that I've done, and I want to pass it on to you. My introduction to slogan practice goes back to the late 70s when I began my study and practice within the Kagyu tradition of Tibetan Buddhism under the Tibetan Buddhist teacher Chogyam Trungpa. He offered slogan practice to all of his students, and it's called Lojong Practice, Lojong. It's a very old practice. It goes back to 9th century India. It developed for about 300 years in India before it was brought to Tibet by a Buddhist teacher by the name of Atisha. And it continued to develop. At this point, there are 59 different slogans, and it's been practiced ever since the 9th century in one form or another, and continues to be practiced. And it's been brought to the West, so there are Western students who practice Lojong. And Lojong practice is a standalone practice, but it's usually within the context of a meditation practice and other practices within the tradition, the Kagyu tradition. So it's not all by itself. Just to give you a flavor of a few, I'll mention 5 of these slogans. I'll just say them out loud. What I want to do is say them, and then I'm going to pause. And this is where we'll begin to touch into actual practice of slogans, what you actually can do with them, which is not just read the words and think superficially, but take a moment to contemplate, to feel the impact, what they might actually mean. We won't take a lot of time with this for the purpose of doing this video, but I want to take at least a moment, not just read them off. Okay. Number 1, be grateful to everyone. I have some carpenters next door who are making a lot of noise, and I'm trying to be grateful to them right now. Number 2, don't be so predictable. Don't act with a twist. Don't seek others' pain as the limbs of your own happiness. Don't wallow in self-pity. Okay, so that's a very brief introduction to Lojong. Each of these slogans has long commentary, and I'm not going to give commentary on them. You can find that somewhere online if you have an interest in that. That was my introduction. But slogan practice is common to all religious traditions. I have some slogans or proverbs or sayings from Christian, Jewish, Muslim, and indigenous traditions that I want to share, just to give a sense of how widespread. This is cross-cultural. This is deep in our history as human beings. So I'll start with some proverbs in the Christian tradition. Again, pausing briefly with each one. Choose your friends carefully. Learn to restrain yourself. Don't make promises you can't keep. Avoid taking gifts that have strings. Pursue wealth for the right reasons. Here are some Jewish sayings. First mend yourself, then mend others. He that can't endure the bad will not live to see the good. The highest form of wisdom is kindness. Do not be wise in words, be wise in deeds. Not to have felt pain is to not be human. Those are some Jewish sayings. Here are some Muslim sayings. A moment of patience in the moment of anger prevents thousands of moments of regret. The worst of our faults is our interest in other people's faults. When you let go of who you are, you become who you might be. These pains you feel are messengers. Listen to them. It is in that which you love most that you find the greatest test. So these are some Muslim sayings. I also want to offer some indigenous sayings and back up a little bit and go a little further deep into the roots of a human relationship with words as powerful tools. Our deep ancestors really believed that words were magic, and there were curses, there were blessings, there were petitionary prayers. This still happens, but was very common across all cultures in a big way early on. Our ancient ancestors had a particular relationship with language and words. It was imbued with a lot more magic and power for casting spells, curses, and blessings, and incantations, and petitionary prayers to the gods for the crops and for the hunt and for everything. I'll give you 5 different indigenous sayings to consider. From the Cheyenne. Our first teacher is our own heart. From the Maasai. I like this one. He who is unable to dance says the yard is stony. Maori. Turn your face to the sun and the shadows fall behind you. The Ojibwe. It is less of a problem to be poor than to be dishonest. From the Eskimo. May you have warmth in your igloo, oil in your lamp, and peace in your heart. So across cultures, throughout time, using words. Often what I've talked about so far has been religious or spiritual traditions. Of course, it's not just limited to that. Perhaps you can think of a number of political slogans that you've heard, or corporate slogans. Nike's slogan, for instance, just do it. So they've been used for different purposes. In the field of psychology and pop psychology, there's what's called affirmations. Perhaps you've heard of affirmations. These are brief positive statements that one can make about oneself to encourage and motivate one to do one's best and to believe in oneself and to overcome low self-esteem or self-hatred even, and to begin to cultivate a internalized sense of one's own belief in one's own goodness and potential. Here are some examples of some affirmations. And these are said in a declarative way, not in a timid, I wish kind of way, but as this is true. Even if you don't quite believe it, and that's why you probably need to say it in the first place, you say it with strength. I am becoming more confident every day. I am grateful for all that I have. I can climb this mountain. The world needs the talents and blessings I can offer. Just a sample. Perhaps you've practiced affirmations, you've heard others. These are things that we can read, we can think about, we can say out loud, that begin to feed into our unconscious mind. We begin to internalize them and feel more and more that they're true. And as we more and more feel that they're true, we act in ways to manifest those things. Which brings us to a little more elaboration on how to actually practice with these slogans. They're words, right? You can read them, you can think them, you can hear them said by somebody else, you can say them yourself. But we have to actually think about it. We have to contemplate it. We have to savor the meaning, contemplate it. What does it mean? What's implied by this? What does it mean to say, I am becoming more confident every day? That could be just a very abstract thing. Can we feel, even vaguely, a sense of what confidence feels like? What would it look like? Is there something we can imagine we would do differently if we were more confident? The point is that we get a feeling and an idea of what you do with this slogan. It's a springboard for something. And a spring has energy, right? And here the energy is the feeling involved in the slogan. It's not in the sense of magical thinking that if you just say the words and you don't actually mean it or feel it, that something great happens. They're just empty words, just sounds otherwise. We have to let ourselves be affected by those words. Let it begin to focus our mind on things. Maybe having contemplated a particular slogan, it comes up during the day as we're going through our day, and there's an occasion suddenly when we realize, this is an opportunity to practice that slogan, to make it real in my life. Okay, so that's a simple understanding of what to do with these words. Read them, hear them in our minds, say them out loud, have a feeling about it, let it focus our mind on what they mean, and look for opportunities in our day-to-day life to enact that thing, that value, that principle. This concludes what I have to say really in this first video. What comes next is what we can add to that. There are several elements that will really increase the power that we can get out of a slogan. And I'm looking forward to talking about that in the next video. So please join me. Thank you for sticking with me to the end of this video. And I hope it was interesting. I hope you were convinced that slogans are not, they're not just what Nike has to say or just what some corporate business has to say to promote its products. They really have a deep root in our human heritage, and we can take advantage of that. Okay, until next time, so long.